Welcome. I'm Richard HAASNOOT, and I'm your host for the Advanced Wisdom Series. My goal is to help you live more of a wisdom-inspired life, and in the quotes of wisdom that I'm going to share with you, I'm also going to share with you some very specific suggestions that you can take to live more of a wisdom-inspired life. The wisdom in this series comes from three God-realized enlightened avatars that I have studied the most: Krishna, Jesus, and Paramahansa Yogananda. As God-realized enlightened avatars, they know God, so when they speak or write, we are hearing the wisdom of God. So, with that said, let's get into today's episode, which touches on the topics of cosmic consciousness, common sense, and God. So let's get into the first quote. To possess cosmic consciousness, oneness with God, when we achieve an enlightenment here, the Creator, capital C, who is able to materialize worlds out of ideas, is an everlasting power given to all supremely advanced souls in the spiritual path. Whew. The spiritual path is a long path for humans, over 10,000 incarnations from the first time a soul incarnates as a human. But ultimately, we get into the home stretch of the journey, and we start expanding our consciousness. And ultimately, we achieve what's called cosmic consciousness, which is the consciousness where we start to know God in a very direct way. And our Creator, God, who's able to materialize worlds out of ideas, this is a level of consciousness that all supremely advanced souls on the spiritual path have. And it's the step where you achieve enlightenment and know God. Okay? Big step here. And this is the first time in this series that I've talked about consciousness to this extent. So, if you want to achieve cosmic consciousness, what are some things that you can do? Well, you need to cultivate self-realization. Begin by cultivating this through practices such as meditation, self-inquiry, and introspection. Okay? These are all qualities that you're going to need along your spiritual journey to ultimately achieve enlightenment and graduation from being a human. As the Bible says, you will no longer need to go out, which means you'll no longer need to reincarnate because you've graduated from the human kingdom to the divine or spiritual kingdom. The next thing that you can do is just surrender to the divine. Now that sounds rather simple, but when we're very attached to our ego, surrendering to our soul, surrendering to the divine, becomes a very difficult thing to do, and that surrendering only happens in relatively small increments, but it needs to begin somewhere. Surrendering to the divine for me, is asking God for guidance and that I can be a servant of God. Show me how I can serve. Okay? And the last thing that I'll suggest here is embracing unity consciousness. Unity consciousness is we are all one. We are all one. We're all part of God's universe. And in this role, we are active agents progressing along a spiritual path to where we can gradually expand our consciousness to where I talked about achieving cosmic consciousness. These are all steps that we take along the spiritual journey, and there are benchmarks along the way. In future episodes, I will talk more about that. The next quote: the right mental education should give each individual at least the common sense to know what methods to adopt in order to perform uniformly all the physical, mental, and spiritual duties calculated to bring real happiness. Okay? This is about developing what's referred to here as common sense. But common sense to me is, not so common, but it helps us navigate life, even though common sense is usually very deeply rooted in the ego. But common sense, kind of, in its general definition, is a positive attribute, a positive skill that we have. So how do you go about developing common sense? Well, first, observe and learn what works, what doesn't work in your life and in the broader universe in which we live. Observe and learn. That's where we develop a wealth of background in history that helps us make decisions based on our common sense when we face some of those decisions. Next, learn from our mistakes. Sometimes mistakes can be disabling. We lose our self-confidence, all of that sort of stuff. I am a big believer of turning failure into success by learning. Okay? Every failure I've had in my life, when I've learned from it, it's catapulted me into the next success. Next, develop some very practical skills to have common sense that are relevant to everyday life, such as budgeting, time management, problem solving, and communication. So here you've got 3 things that you can do to help you develop more common sense. Next quote. Since God is the source of all power, it is right to seek Him first, for with God, health and prosperity are added. But with the acquirement of health and prosperity alone, God is not attained. Okay? So, seek God, and as we do that, we bring greater health and prosperity into our life. That's important, but it's still dealing with the physicalness of our being here. But even with that acquirement, God is not attained, because God is not just about health and prosperity. That's a fairly small part of it all. The big part of it is the ability to, through meditation especially, gradually achieve greater awareness, greater consciousness, greater understanding of God, and using those understandings to make the world a better place by living more of a wisdom-inspired life, which is the highest form of life we as humans can do. So how do you seek God? Well, cultivate spiritual practices. Meditation is the most important of them, but studying sacred texts also on a daily basis is part of my routine. Seek guidance and inspiration. This can be through seeking guidance, can be done through prayer. Prayer, to be effective, and it is effective, is done when we are passionate about wanting help and guidance. Empty prayers like, God, I need some help with this. If you got time, can you help me? That kind of stuff isn't going to work too well. God does not respond to that very frequently. Okay? And another one that I love, because I live in an area where I can be in nature, I can be on a national forest hiking trail in less than a mile from where I'm talking to you right now, and seeking God in nature, seeking God in beauty, in the pureness of all of it. So a number of things that you can do to seek God in your life. At the heart of all this, and I've said this many, many times, the foundational practice for seeking God is the practice of meditation. As always, thank you very much for watching this episode. I look forward to reconnecting with you soon. Thank you very much.